I still remember the exact moment when my whole world collapsed. Not with a bang, but with a simple notification. A quiet little ping from my husband's phone. While he was in the shower. I wasn't the type to check Adrian's phone. 14 years of marriage had built what I thought was unshakable trust. But that evening, something felt off. Adrian had been distant for months, working late weekends, business meetings, the sudden interest in his appearance, all the cliches. I realized with a sharp, humiliating clarity that this wasn't the first time a warning sign had flickered in my mind. There had been other nights I'd noticed his phone face down, the abrupt silences when I entered a room, the scent of unfamiliar perfume on his suit. And every time I'd told myself I was imagining it because it was easier to pretend everything was fine. Because I was too afraid of what the truth might cost me. I refused to see his phone lit up on our bedroom dresser. A text preview from his assistant. Reservation confirmed at Vento for Friday, 8 p.m. She'll be thrilled with the private booth. I shouldn't have unlocked his phone. I knew that, but something primal took over, that instinct that tells you when your life is about to change forever. My fingers moved without my permission, typing in his passcode, our anniversary date. Ironically, what I found wasn't just a text about dinner plans, it was an entire secret life. Messages, photos, plans for their future. Her name was Lila. She worked in his law firm's marketing department, younger, of course, beautiful. Of course, and married too. I sat there clutching his phone, unable to breathe properly. 14 years of marriage. Our beautiful home, our shared friends, our dreams. All of it built on what now felt like quicksand. Nicole, have you seen my blue tie? Adrian called from the bathroom, his voice so normal, so everyday, as if he hadn't been systematically destroying our marriage message by message. I placed his phone exactly where it had been, my hands trembling. It's in the second drawer. I answered, amazed at how steady my voice sounded when inside I was screaming. Part of me hated how easily I could slip back into the role of the composed wife, even now, when everything was coming undone. That night I lay beside him, listening to his peaceful breathing, fighting the urge to wake him up and demand answers. But something held me back. Pride, maybe, or perhaps a deeper instinct, one that whispered there was a better way to handle this betrayal than a messy, emotional confrontation, where he'd just lie anyway. The next morning I kissed him goodbye, like nothing had changed. Good luck with your presentation today, I said, knowing full well there was no presentation. Just another day of lies. After he left, I called in sick to my job at the college, where I taught economics. Then I did something I'd never done before. I started investigating my own husband. It wasn't difficult. Adrian had grown careless, confident in my trust. His email password was the same as always. His calendar revealed everything, including the special dinner he'd planned for Friday night at Vento, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. A dinner that wasn't with a client, as he'd told me that morning. Then I found something else. Lila's full name in an email thread. Leila Mercer. With a quick social media search, I found her handsome husband, Ethan, who owned a successful architectural firm downtown. My first instinct was to call her husband immediately, but I stopped myself. A hysterical phone call would accomplish nothing except give them all a chance to create more lies. No, this required something different, something they wouldn't expect. I remember sitting at our kitchen island, staring at my coffee growing cold when the idea crystallized. If Adrian wanted a special dinner at Vento, then that's exactly what he would get, with an unexpected twist. I found myself laughing, a hollow, strange sound that echoed in our empty kitchen. The same kitchen where Adrian had sworn his love and loyalty to me countless times. Where we'd talked about children we would never have. Where we'd made plans for a future that was now dissolving before my eyes. You want dinner, Adrian, I whispered to myself. I'll give you a dinner you'll never forget. That's when I picked up my phone and called Vento. The maitre was exceptionally helpful. Yes, they had another table available on Friday night. Yes, it was possible to request a specific location. Perhaps right next to the private booth already reserved under my husband's corporate account. A business dinner, I explained smoothly. The proximity would be perfect for potentially joining parties later. The maitre d' understood completely. Next, I needed to contact Ethan Mercer without raising suspicions. Fortunately, being an economics professor had its advantages, including legitimate reasons to reach out to successful business owners for guest lecture opportunities. I crafted a perfectly professional email about the college's executive speaker series, mentioning that his innovative approach to urban development would be invaluable for our graduate students, and perhaps we could discuss the opportunity over dinner. I had a reservation at Vento on Friday night, if that worked with his schedule. His response came within hours, polite, interested, and available. He had no idea that his wife would be at the same restaurant that night, cozied up with my husband in a private booth just a table away. As I closed my laptop, I felt something shift inside me. The paralyzing shock was hardening into something else, something cold and clear and focused. For 14 years, I had been the perfect wife, supportive, understanding, patient. I had built my life around our partnership, while Adrian apparently built a life around his deceptions. Friday night would change everything for all of us. The 3 days before Friday were the longest of my life. I moved through them like a ghost in my own home, watching Adrian with new eyes. How had I missed so much? The way he checked his phone when he thought I wasn't looking, the mysterious calls he took in another room, the subtle changes in his cologne and wardrobe. "I've got that client dinner Friday night," he mentioned casually over breakfast Thursday morning. "Don't wait up, these things always run late." I nodded, buttering my toast with steady hands. "That big corporate merger, exactly," he said, relief washing over his face. At my easy acceptance, probably boring shop talk all night. "I might go out myself," I offered. A colleague suggested we get together. Adrian barely registered my words, already absorbed in his phone. "That's nice, honey. 14 years of marriage, and he couldn't even pretend to be interested in my life for 30 seconds. Had it always been this way? Or had I been so dedicated to maintaining our perfect image that I'd edited out his indifference? Had I been so desperate to protect the illusion that I willingly closed my eyes to every little humiliation, telling myself it was just a rough patch? That evening I found myself standing in our walk-in closet, staring at my reflection at 41. I was still attractive. My dark hair showed few grays, my figure remained trim from years of disciplined exercise, but I wasn't Lila with her 29 years and effortless beauty. I wasn't the woman who still made him light up when she entered a room. I touched the fine lines around my eyes, wondering if this was why Adrian had strayed. No, I stopped that thought cold. This wasn't about me aging or any deficiency on my part. This was about Adrian's selfishness, his entitlement, his complete disregard for our vows. I had given him everything, supported his career while building my own, moved 3 times for his promotions, stood by him during his father's prolonged illness, forgiven the small betrayals that now seemed like obvious warning signs. The late nights, the missed anniversaries, the emotional distance whenever I needed him most. Friday arrived with strange clarity. I dressed carefully for my business dinner, a navy blue sheath dress that was professional yet flattering, pearl earrings Adrian had given me for our 10th anniversary, and the red-soled heels I rarely wore because Adrian once commented they made me look like I was trying too hard. For one absurd moment, I wondered if he would even notice I'd worn them. If any part of him would recognize the woman he had vowed to love. I left work early to get my hair done. A subtle change, softer waves framing my face. The stylist commented on how calm I seemed if she only knew the storm raging inside me. At home, I packed a small overnight bag and placed it in my car trunk. Whatever happened tonight, I wouldn't be sleeping under the same roof as Adrian. Then I drove to Vento, arriving 30 minutes before my reservation. The maitre d' recognized me from our phone conversation with conspiratorial courtesy. He showed me the layout, my table positioned with perfect sightlines to the private booth where Adrian would be sitting with Lila, from where they would be seated. They wouldn't immediately notice me unless they were looking around the restaurant. "Your other party has already called to confirm he's on his way," the maitre d' informed me. I settled at the bar with a martini, watching the entrance like a hawk. Adrian arrived first, 15 minutes early, nervous energy evident in every movement. He looked handsome in his best suit, the one I'd helped him select for important client meetings. He was escorted to the private booth, 10 minutes later, she arrived. Lila was everything I expected and feared. Young, beautiful, confident, she wore a fitted red dress and moved with the assurance of someone who had never had to doubt her place in the world. My husband stood when she approached, his face transformed with an expression of pure adoration I hadn't seen directed at me in years. Something shattered inside me as I watched him take her hands, lean in for a lingering kiss. It wasn't just the betrayal. It was the happiness on his face, the absolute contentment with her. He looked alive in a way he never did with me anymore. Nicole Hartman. I turned to find Ethan Mercer standing beside me. In his early 40s, he had the solid, dependable good looks of a man comfortable in his own skin. Dark hair with distinguished touches of gray at the temples, kind eyes, a genuine smile. "Mr. Mercer," I managed, offering my hand. "Thank you so much for agreeing to meet on such short notice. Please call me Ethan." His handshake was warm and firm. "And the pleasure is mine. Your proposal about the lecture series is intriguing. If he only knew." The Mistress appeared to escort us to our table. The one with the perfect view of my husband and Ethan's wife, now cozily ensconced in their private booth, hands intertwined on the table. As we settled in, I tried to focus on Ethan, on maintaining the facade of a professional dinner, but my eyes kept drifting to the booth, where Adrian was now pouring champagne, leaning in to whisper something that made Lila laugh with uninhibited joy. "So tell me about this executive series," Ethan said, unfolding his napkin. "The architecture-economics intersection is fascinating." I forced my attention back to him, launching into a well-rehearsed explanation about interdisciplinary education, all while my peripheral vision registered my husband's hand, now resting on Lila's bare knee under the table. "Nicole?" Ethan's voice broke through my distraction. "Are you all right? You seem a bit—" "I'm fine," I said, reaching for my water glass. "Just a bit tired, end of semester pressure." Ethan nodded sympathetically, then began telling me about his latest project, a sustainable apartment complex downtown. He was passionate, intelligent, completely unaware that his wife sat 20 feet away, now feeding my husband a bite of her appetizer. "I've been talking too much," he said with a self-deprecating smile. "Tell me about your work." As I began explaining my research focus, I noticed Lila excuse herself from the table. Bathroom break. No doubt this was my opportunity. "Would you excuse me for a moment?" I asked Ethan, who stood politely as I rose. I wasn't sure exactly what I planned to do, but my feet carried me directly into the path of Lila as she returned from the ladies' room. The moment our eyes met, recognition flickered across her face. She had seen me in photos at Adrian's office, no doubt. "You're Adrian's wife," she said, her voice barely audible. "And you're Ethan's," I replied, tilting my head toward our table, where Ethan sat with his back to us. The color drained from her perfect face. Looking back now, I realized I'd been preparing for that confrontation since the moment I saw that text on Adrian's phone. But what happened next wasn't something I could have scripted. "Please," Lila whispered, her eyes darting between me and the oblivious Ethan at our table. "Not here." "Why not here?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady. "Isn't this the perfect setting? The beautiful restaurant, the romantic lighting you've clearly been enjoying?" Lila's perfectly manicured hand reached out, grabbing my arm. "Nicole, I can explain." "Can you?" I gently removed her hand. "Can you explain why you're having an affair with my husband? Can you explain why you're betraying that man over there who has no idea what's happening right now?" Her eyes welled with tears. "It's complicated. It always is, isn't it?" I smiled sadly. Love, marriage, loyalty, such complicated concepts. Behind Lila, I could see Adrian had noticed our interaction. The color had drained from his face as he half rose from the booth, uncertain whether to approach or retreat. "What do you want?" Lila asked, a tremor in her voice. That question caught me off guard. What did I want? Revenge, justice, to hurt them as badly as they'd hurt me. "I want honesty," I said finally, something that's been missing from my marriage for longer than I realized. I glanced back at Ethan, who was now looking our way with a puzzled expression. "Your husband seems like a good man. Does he deserve this?" Lila's face crumpled. "No," she whispered. "He doesn't." "Neither did I replied. At that moment, Adrian appeared behind Lila, his face a mask of panic. "Nicole, what are you doing here?" "Having dinner," I said simply. "This isn't," he began. "What it looks like," I finished for him. "Adrian, please, we're well past that point." Ethan approached us then, confusion evident on his face. Nicole, is everything okay? Do you know these people? The moment hung suspended in time. I could see Adrian silently pleading with me, Lila frozen in terror. I had all the power in that moment, the power to create a scene, to expose them publicly, to watch their carefully constructed deception crumble spectacularly. But something else had been taking shape inside me during these past few days. A realization that the most devastating response wasn't a public meltdown. It was something altogether more controlled. Ethan, I said calmly, I'd like you to meet my husband, Adrian Hartman. The confusion on Ethan's face deepened, then his eyes shifted to Lila, standing pale and trembling beside Adrian. And I believe you already know Lila, I added softly. The comprehension that dawned on Ethan's face was heartbreaking to witness, confusion giving way to disbelief, then to a devastating understanding. Lila, his voice cracked on her name. She couldn't meet his eyes. Ethan, How long? He asked, his voice hollow. No one answered. The silence was answer enough. I'd imagined this moment differently, expected satisfaction from their exposure, from watching their comfortable deception explode. Instead, I felt a profound sadness witnessing Ethan's pain, a mirror of my own. Perhaps we should continue this conversation somewhere more private, I suggested. Conscious of the curious glances from nearby tables, Adrian found his voice then. Nicole, listen, we need to talk about this. We certainly do, I agreed, but not here. And not just the two of us. The maitre d' approached, sensing the tension. Is everything all right with your dining experience? I smiled politely. Actually, we've had an unexpected change of plans. Could you possibly combine our reservations? It seems we need to have a 4-person conversation. The poor man looked between the 4 of us, professional enough not to react to the obvious tension. Of course, madam, right this way. He led us to a private dining room, away from curious eyes, and quickly arranged a table for 4. I'll give you some time with the menus, he said, backing out and closing the door. We sat in painful silence, Adrian and Lila on one side, Ethan and I on the other. The symbolic division wasn't lost on any of us. How did you know? Adrian finally asked me. Does it matter? I replied. I suppose not, he conceded. Ethan had yet to speak, his eyes fixed on his wife. Were you ever going to tell me? He finally asked her. Lila's mascara had created dark trails down her cheeks. I don't know, she whispered. That's the problem with affairs, I said. They exist in a fantasy world where decisions never have to be made, where reality never intrudes, until it does. Adrian looked at me with something like surprise. You're being very calm about this. What did you expect, Adrian? That I'd throw a glass of wine in your face? Create a scene? Give you the moral high ground of calling me unstable or hysterical? He had the decency to look ashamed. I've had 3 days to process this, I continued. 3 days of looking back at our 14 years together, identifying all the moments you chose to lie instead of being honest with me. 3 days. Lila's head snapped up. You've known for 3 days? And planned this? This ambush? I turned to her. Yes. And you know what the interesting part is? In those 3 days, neither of you noticed anything different. Adrian, you came home every night, kissed me on the cheek, asked about my day without listening to the answer. Just like always. You looked me in the eyes and told me about your client dinner tonight without a flicker of guilt. And in those same 3 days, I questioned myself 100 times, wondering if I was being cruel, if I was about to humiliate us all for no reason. Part of me kept whispering that maybe it was my fault, that if I'd been different, better, this wouldn't have happened. I hated that voice, but it was there. I didn't want to hurt you, Adrian said weakly. Ethan laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. That's rich. You didn't want to hurt her while you were sleeping with my wife. The waiter knocked and entered with water and bread, retreating quickly when he sensed the atmosphere. I'd planned this confrontation meticulously. Reserved the table, invited Ethan, timed everything perfectly. But I hadn't anticipated how it would feel when the moment actually arrived. The crushing weight of all those lies. The reality that my marriage had been a facade longer than I wanted to admit. What happens now? Lila asked, her voice small. I reached into my purse and pulled out a room key. I've booked a room at the hotel across the street for myself, I clarified. I'm not sleeping in our bed tonight. Adrian looked stricken. Nicole, no, I cut him off. I'm not finished. For 14 years I've been the understanding wife, the supportive partner. I rearranged my career for your promotions. I forgave your absences. I believed every excuse. That ends tonight. I placed the key on the table and stood up. Ethan, I'm truly sorry about how you had to find out. You deserved better. Ethan nodded, still processing his new reality. Adrian, I continued, I'll be at my sister's for the weekend. When I come home Monday, I expect you to be gone. Take what you need for now. We can figure out the rest later. You're throwing me out? He asked incredulously. No, Adrian. You threw yourself out the moment you decided our marriage vows were optional. I turned to Lila. He's all yours now. No more sneaking around. No more thrill of the forbidden. Just the reality of a man who betrays his commitments when they become inconvenient. With that, I walked toward the door, then paused with my hand on the handle. Oh, and dinner's on Adrian's corporate card. You both seem to be familiar with the arrangement. I walked out of Vento with my head held high, past my car in the valet line, and crossed the street to the Grand Meridian Hotel. Only when I reached my room, a luxury king with a view of the city I'd splurged on, did I finally allow myself to cry. Not delicate tears, not dignified weeping, but gut-wrenching, body-shaking sobs that seemed to come from some primordial place inside me. I cried for the marriage I thought I had, for the 14 years of memories now tainted, for the future I'd planned with a man who had been living a double life. I don't know how long I sat on the floor, back against the bed, letting out years of suppressed pain. Eventually the storm passed, leaving me empty, but somehow clearer. A soft knock on the door startled me. I checked the peephole, expecting Adrian, ready to tell him to leave. Instead, I found Ethan Mercer standing in the hallway, looking as shattered as I felt. I opened the door a crack. Ethan, I'm sorry to intrude, he said, his voice rough from emotion. I couldn't go home. I didn't know where else to go. I hesitated, then opened the door wider. Professional boundaries seemed irrelevant after what we'd just experienced together. How did you know where to find me? I asked. The hotel, you mentioned crossing the street. He shrugged. There was only one possibility. I asked at reception if Nicole Hartman had checked in. They just told you? I might have implied I was your husband, he admitted. Sorry, under different circumstances, I might have been concerned. But tonight, we were just two people united by the same betrayal. Come in, I said. I'm afraid I look a mess. I gestured to my tear-stained face. Join the club, he replied with a sad smile, his own eyes red-rimmed. We sat in the two armchairs by the window, looking out at the city lights in silence for a while. Did you know? He finally asked. Before the text. Did you suspect? I thought about it. Honestly, part of me did. Adrian had changed, become distant, but I didn't want to see it. Ethan nodded. Lila's been working late for months, taking weekend girls' trips. I trusted her completely. That's what makes it so effective, I said. They trade on our trust. What are you going to do now? He asked. I took a deep breath. Exactly what I said. I'm not taking him back just like that. After 14 years. The 14 years are exactly why, I explained. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a deliberate choice to betray everything we built. And from what I saw in his messages, it's been going on for almost a year. Ethan winced. A year. God. What about you? I asked gently. He ran his hands through his hair. I don't know. We've been married 7 years. No kids, thankfully. But still. You don't have to decide tonight. No, but I know I can't unsee what I saw. The way she looked at him. His voice broke. In that moment, a flicker of fear passed through me, sharp and raw. What if I'd never find someone to look at me that way again? What if I was simply unlovable, too cautious, too composed, too much? The thought lodged in my chest like a splinter. I reached out impulsively and took his hand. Human connection in the midst of our shared pain. Around midnight, Ethan left for his own hotel room. We'd talked for hours, not just about our unfaithful spouses, but about our lives, our work, our dreams. Two strangers finding unexpected connection through shared trauma. The next morning, I woke to frantic knocking. Adrian stood at my door, unshaven, still in last night's clothes. Nicole, please, he begged. We need to talk. I let him in, maintaining careful distance. Did you come alone, or is Lila waiting in the car? He flinched. That's over. I ended it last night. It was a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. A year-long mistake, I noted. His eyes widened. You knew how long? I saw everything, Adrian. The messages, the plans for weekend getaways disguised as business trips, the apartment you were looking at together. He collapsed into a chair. It wasn't real, what Lila and I had. It was fantasy, not reality. And that makes it better? No, of course not. But, Nicole, 14 years. 14 years of building a life together. You can't just throw that away. I didn't, I said quietly. You did with every lie. Every time you chose her over me. I'll do anything, he pleaded. Therapy. Complete transparency. Whatever you need. I studied the man I'd loved for so long, trying to reconcile him with the person who had systematically betrayed me. What's really changed, Adrian? You're not sorry you had the affair. You're sorry you got caught. That's not true, he insisted. I've been tortured by guilt. I was going to end it. When? I challenged. Before or after the trip to Cabo you booked for next month? Before or after the apartment you put a deposit on? His face crumpled. How can I make this right? You can't, I said simply. Some things, once broken, can't be fixed. They can only be acknowledged and left behind. You're really done with me? Disbelief colored his voice. Just like that? No, Adrian. Not just like that. After a year of you being done with me while pretending otherwise. After discovering that the man I built my life around is capable of sustained, deliberate deception. He tried another approach. What about our friends, our families, the embarrassment of divorce? Embarrassment? I cut him off. That's what you're worried about? Your reputation? Our reputation. He corrected. We've built a life together. People respect us, look up to us. I laughed, a hollow sound. Well, I've already taken care of that. I called your mother this morning. The color drained from his face. You didn't. I did. And your sister, and our friends Mark and Sarah. I told them exactly why I'm leaving you. You had no right, he exploded. No right to tell the truth. I countered. I spent years helping you build your perfect image, Adrian. I'm not going to be the villain in your story. He stood abruptly. This isn't over. You're upset. You're not thinking clearly. Actually, I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years. The locks will be changed by Monday. Take what you need from the house this weekend. You can't just kick me out of my own home. Our home, I corrected. The one I designed. The one whose mortgage I've paid half of for 14 years. We can figure out the financial details later. But I'm not leaving. Adrian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then quickly looked away. Is that Lila? I asked. Missing you already? His silence was answer enough. Go, I said. She needs you more than I do right now. After he left, I sat alone in my hotel room expecting to feel barren. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Relief. Like putting down a heavy burden I hadn't realized I'd been carrying. My phone rang. Ethan, I just wanted to check on you, he said when I answered. How are you holding up? Better than expected, I admitted. Adrian came by. Lila's been calling non-stop, he said. I haven't answered. What will you do? He sighed. I think I've known the answer since last night. I deserve better than someone who can systematically lie to my face. Yes, I agreed. You do. Have you had breakfast? He asked suddenly. I could use a friendly face this morning. I looked at my reflection in the mirror, eyes puffy from crying but clearer somehow, unburdened. Breakfast sounds perfect, I said. The weeks that followed were a blur of lawyers, mediators, and painful divisions of a shared life. Adrian didn't go quietly, alternating between desperate pleas for reconciliation and bitter accusations that I was overreacting to one mistake. But I held firm, supported by a strength I hadn't known I possessed. Lila moved away within a month, unable to face the social fallout in our interconnected community. According to mutual friends, Adrian tried to continue their relationship for a while, but the fantasy had crumbled under the weight of reality. Ethan and I continued to meet, first as emotional support through our parallel divorces, then as genuine friends. We understood each other's pain in ways no one else could. I never thanked you properly, Ethan said one evening, 6 months after that fateful dinner at Vento. We were walking along the riverfront, the summer sunset painting the water gold. For what? For having the courage to expose the truth. For not looking the other way. I considered this. I didn't feel courageous at the time, just desperate. Whatever you felt, you saved me from years of deception, he said. If it weren't for you, I might still be living a lie. It was strange how life's most painful moments could lead to unexpected gifts. Through the dissolution of my marriage, I discovered my own resilience. I'd rebuilt my self-respect. I'd learned who my true friends were, the ones who stood by me without judgment. And I'd found Ethan, not as a replacement for what I'd lost, but as something entirely new and unexpected. "Are you happy, Nicole?" he asked as we paused to watch a boat sail past. "Not always," I answered honestly. "Some days I still mourn what I thought I had, the future I planned." He nodded in understanding. "But mostly," I continued, "I'm grateful for the truth, painful as it was, for the chance to rebuild on something real instead of comfortable illusions." "To truth, then," he said, taking my hand gently in his. I thought about the Nicole from a year ago, so certain of her place in the world, so blind to the reality of her marriage. I thought about the Nicole who had sat in that hotel room sobbing, believing her life was over. "You know what I learned from all this?" I said. "We're stronger than we think. When everything falls apart, we don't fall apart with it." Ethan squeezed my hand. "No, we don't." 1 year after that night at Vento, I ran into Adrian at a colleague's retirement party. He looked older, tired around the eyes. We exchanged awkward pleasantries before he pulled me aside. "I never properly apologized," he said quietly. "Not really. I was too busy trying to save myself." "And now?" I asked. "Now I know what I threw away," he said simply. "And I'm sorry, Nicole. Truly sorry." I felt a surprising lack of bitterness, but also in some small, hidden place in my chest, a dull ache that I couldn't quite banish. A tiny part of me still wished things had been different. That we had both been different. "I hope you find happiness, Adrian. You seem to have found yours," he noted, glancing across the room where Ethan was chatting with some faculty members. "I'm building something new," I corrected. "Day by day." Later, as Ethan and I walked home under a canopy of stars, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us together. The pain that had to be endured, the facades that had to crumble. "What are you thinking about?" Ethan asked. "How the worst night of my life somehow led me here," I replied. "How sometimes we need to lose everything to find what we really need." He stopped walking and turned to face me, his eyes reflecting the streetlights. "I'm glad you reserved that table next to theirs," he said with a small smile. "So am I," I whispered. "Though sometimes, when the nights are very quiet, I still wonder if there was something I could have done to change it. Sometimes betrayal isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the painful beginning of a better one." So the story is over, our wonderful friends. Are you still here at this hour? If you are, I have a feeling something in this journey touched your heart in some way. Maybe it stirred an old memory, a regret, or perhaps a quiet hope you've been carrying. Let's just sit together for a moment, you and I, and look at it from a perspective that has no right or wrong. Sometimes the deepest betrayals crack us open, and what pours out feels like everything we thought made us whole. But the truth is, nothing real is ever truly lost. As painful as it was, Nicole's story is a testament to resilience and the quiet power of choosing yourself when someone else refuses to honor you. It shows that love isn't just about holding on. It's also about letting go when it costs you your dignity. Like Ethan said, whatever you felt, you saved me from years of deception. That's not just a line. It's a reminder that even in your darkest hour, your courage can become someone else's light. If you're carrying the weight of betrayal or the ache of something unfinished, know this. You are not defined by the people who failed you. You are defined by the way you rise, by the softness you refuse to let the world harden out of you. And when you choose to rebuild, day by day, you're not erasing the past, you're honoring your own worth. So if this story meant something to you, if it sparked even the smallest flicker of strength, I invite you to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. You never know who might need to hear this message at 2 a.m. when the world feels too heavy. Thank you for being here, for feeling this with me. And remember, sometimes betrayal isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the painful beginning of a better one.